March and April.
Yeah, we went to you call them the King of Foothills?
I'm doing okay. How about you? I've got a lingering sore throat and an occasional cough, so just to
there were some parts that were okay, but then some that were a little dicey. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's now 11:30. I'm going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission portion of our meeting today. Happy New Year. Excited for the year ahead. This is our first meet of 2024. And just want to say thanks to our team managing all of the interesting predicaments with the fog and freezing fog and all that good stuff. So thank you to our team for working on that, doing such a great job. And that's really all I have. Are there any housekeeping items or questions on the agenda? Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, no, I just want to first also say congratulations. We haven't met since you received the honor of the whole Treasure Valley Compass Award Elected Official of the Year. Well deserved. Governor Little, I believe, received it last year. So amongst all the elected officials and staff of our agencies in the Treasure Valley, it was well deserved. I was pleased to be there. It was a good meeting too of Compass. I also want to say thanks to the staff for the snow. I was disappointed that it snowed on December 26th, but we got through it, and I noticed there were not very many teleses as a result, so kudos, and also with the fog. And I had one question or just comment on the Collister one. I'm going to look at Justin because it's good. I'm not going to move it to the regular agenda. We talked a lot in our planning process about level of traffic stress. We really got down granular around discussing that. The scope of work still is of 38 pages. The reference to pedestrian impacts is really just 1.5 pages of the scope. There's a lot of criteria, design criteria, geotechnical terms, all this stuff. Basically, it's a road to move vehicles. So I'm hoping that over time this year we can develop the standard language of our scope of work to be more explicit about what we discuss in terms of level of traffic stress. There is a reference to LTS on page 16, but it doesn't say what level that we discussed and what wanted prioritized, and we were assured that would be it. So as we do this, I have some similar concerns about the other scope of works. So I know we're involving more of the consultants in the front end, but it doesn't seem to be penetrating the standard language that seems to be put into all of our scope of works when we're contracting for design services, and I'd really like to see that. It was disappointing that our extensive discussion on Collister just wasn't in there in the actual scope of work. So that's what I'd like to see happening this year.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other questions? Okay, Director.
Madam President, Commissioners, again, Happy New Year back to you all. Welcome. It's great to have you all back. A couple of housekeeping items and a couple of things I'd like to share with you. First off, I'd like to say this last year, I met with the new District 3 engineer, and we had a great discussion. And out of that discussion, we have determined that in the best interest of ITD and ACHD, we are going to establish a quarterly meeting between our plans and projects and development and technical services team, staff members, and their staff members. I think that will move a lot of goodwill back and forth to ensure that if there are issues that we believe are very important in the operation of the Ada County Highway District systems, that the ITD is either well aware and understands our perspective going forward. The new District 3 engineer was very supportive of my request, and so we'll be starting that in January, moving forward on a quarterly basis. WTS annual awards, as I shared with you earlier, are being finalized. We'll have those all in by Friday and such. The due date is on Monday, and then we'll see how we fare. I think we'll do very well. The Idaho Business Review Empowering Women Award nomination is in. I sent those all to you, I think yesterday or day before. just to let you know what we have submitted. And then, Madam President and Commissioner Gold, again, this Friday, we are giving an orientation to Mayor-elect Pike. I provided both of you the presentation. If you have any concerns or questions, please let me know, and we'll work those going forward. And then January 18th is a big day. That is the WTS meet and greet with BSU President Trump. Do not mispronounce that. She will attack you very quickly. That's at the Hillcrest Country Club. If you intend to attend, please let Stacy know, because we will have a majority of our executive team there for that meet and greet and such for her. In front of you, I've given you the monthly impact investment fee report, and just as a highlight, again, City of Meridian is leading investments in both residential and commercial. City of Boise is second with commercial, and City of Star is second with residential and such. So these are for your reviews as is. I've also provided you with this piece of paper. As you recall, many years ago, there was an initiative called Highway 16. And at that time, we had identified all of the local impact projects that were going to be a result of the Highway 16 initiative. We, at that point, asked the legislature, and they very kindly supported us, for $36 million in fees. Well, as you know, this has been held up now for 2 years, outside of the anything that the Ada County Highway District could do. So I've asked our plans and project team to go back and let's look at what those costs are estimated today versus 2.5 years ago. And as you can see from the table, we've gone from 36 to $58.3 million in costs, and that's not including the $6 to $10 million that the City of Napa may be asking the Ada County Highway District to support for their part of the project. So what I'd like to do is have our lobbyist start working this again through the transportation committees to see if there's any opportunity for the legislature to provide the additional funding due to the direct impacts of the state's project, Highway 16, on the local infrastructure. So this is what we have now. This is what we know, and such. So unless you have any concerns, we may be successful, we may not be successful, but and such, I think my recommendation is that we move forward and ask the legislature to provide the appropriate funding for projects from the state projects.
Madam President.
Thanks, Director. Just one quick question, Commissioner McKinney. So, Director Wong, what was the year that we originated these first initial total cost estimates?
21.
21. So then, generally speaking, what's the percentage of an increase?
Oh, I don't have that.
I mean, I can't do the math on top. Just
I know.
really
I'll have to get back to you. So what's the percentage increase, smart people?
That's about 40%.
Yeah, 40%. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner McKinney.
Director Wong, just looking at this sheet, I'm just looking at the very bottom line. Total estimated project need is $32.3 million. Am I to understand that's what we need on top of what we already have? I just want to understand these numbers here.
What we initially were granted was the $36 million, and today's estimate, based on delays outside of our purview, we're estimating that to be $58 million now to produce those projects. As you know, the City of Napa has recently come to the Commission asking for additional support in dollars and cents on their part of the project on USTIC, if I'm not mistaken, and that is around 6 to 10 million. So if you add the two up, we think it'd be appropriate to go in at this point in time for a total of $32.3 million additional to make everybody whole in today's environment.
So this is the 58.3 plus 10.
Yes.
Subtracting the 36, and you get 32.3 million additional that's needed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, none of you will be surprised at my request, and that is, and I'm very hopeful that we can be successful with this, but if not, we probably ought to decide which of these projects are easiest to peel off and not do until we do get funding.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I'm sure you won't be surprised that staff will be looking at all options.
Oh, yeah, and I expect Franklin will be one of them.
And finally, Commissioners, next week, the Ide Bailey team will be in front of you to brief you on our very recent financial analysis and stuff, our audit. In front of you are the books that have been produced. And so what I'd like to do is ask you to turn to page 58. Because 58 is very important to the commission and of course the Ada County Highway District. On 58, you'll see financial statement, type of auditor's report issued, unmodified. That is the top of the line. Internal control over financial reporting, material weakness identified, no. Non-compliance material to financial statements noted, no. Federal awards, material weaknesses identified, no. Significant deficiencies identified are considered to be material weaknesses, none reported. Type of auditor's report issued on compliance for major programs, unmodified. Any audit findings disclosed that were required to be reported in accordance with the uniform with the code, whatever it was, no. So at the end of the day, Commissioners, again, this is without a doubt another tremendous example of the great effort that the staff and all of our team members put in. This is gold. See page 58 right up front. So Commissioners, that concludes my director's report for today. I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Director. Looking forward to that presentation next week. Any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll be at ease until noon. All right, good afternoon. It's now 12 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you to all of you that are joining us online and in person. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. If we don't have any requests for that at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam President, I would move to approve the consent agenda. My comments on the Collister project were made at the pre-commission.
Is there a second?
Yes. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we've got a couple items on our regular agenda. The first being the election of officers for this year in 2024. Commissioners.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gold.
I will nominate you, Commissioner Pickering, for president.
I'll second that.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I do have some thoughts on election. Normally, this commission has typically not re-elected a commission president 2 years in a row, but has rotated the responsibility. And I don't see a big reason to change that sort of tradition, if you will. But there are a couple of comments and concerns that I have that I think it's worth airing, at least before we take a vote on this. Some concerns that I've had regarding Commissioner Pickering's leadership during the past year. One of them, well, there's 4 or 5. First of all, there's been evidence a number of times that there are what are called serial meetings sort of happening behind the scenes, in which 2 or 3 commissioners are discussing commission business outside of the public hearing format in and making more or less making agreements among themselves before meetings, and that goes against the Idaho public meetings laws. Second, there has been I have noticed, and I think some other commissioners have noticed, a deteriorating relationship between the commission and senior staff here at ACHD for a variety of reasons. But I believe those reasons primarily come back to actions of President Pickering. A third item that has some concern is that there's been a greater push. This is partly a policy issue, but it also has to do with the functioning of the district and the commission, and that is pushing for more selecting of projects based upon individual districts rather than considering the county as a whole. And what that has a tendency to do is to sort of pit mayors in the county. We have 5 mayors, and sometimes when we're pushing to get more projects done in certain of the commission districts than others, it presents sort of a almost a spoils system, kind of like what happens in the U.S. Congress, and which is a real troublesome thing, in which every congressman is seeking to bring home the bacon for their district rather than focusing on the nation as a whole. In our case, it's commission districts rather than the county as a whole. And so that's a concerning ideological development. Last two items, it's my understanding that on at least one occasion, Commissioner Pickering has sought to put items on the commission agenda that are secret agenda items in which the details of the item are not disclosed beforehand. That's a troubling action. And then finally, it's my understanding that there have been a number of times, it's my understanding that the commission president has sought to take significant actions as president, representing herself as having the authority of the commission, when in fact they're items that the commission either hadn't discussed or hadn't agreed upon. And that these are troubling issues that I think are not appropriate for a commission president, and I think the commission needs to be aware of these before voting on a new president.
Madam President?
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I think it's highly inappropriate to make accusations against a fellow commissioner without having raised those at the time that you had those concerns to start with. I know we have many different policy differences, and oftentimes Commissioner McKinney's in the minority on policy differences, and I think that should be confused with somehow that there was some sort of preparation in advance of those. My observation is that this commission has been extremely diligent in keeping communications limited and restricted until we're in a public meeting. But there are policy differences, and that's the root, I think, of the distinctions between the five of us. The accusations of secret agendas, items, that's new. I've never heard that before, and hasn't been raised. And my view is always that if you have a concern with any member of the commission, you bring it up with them. You speak to them individually, and then if you didn't get sufficient response, you raise it as a commission as a whole. And I have never observed and never heard from the outside that this president or previous presidents have represented that the commission has taken a position when in fact it hasn't taken a position. So I would encourage you to take those issues up with each commissioner that you have a concern with, and this is not the place to do it. I, on the other hand, believe that Commissioner Pickering has addressed a concern that I've raised many, many times in the past, and that is we are a policy-making body. We have to take our role as policymakers seriously. My concern about the need to dive into the policy of this agency, not necessarily the administration, the day-to-day administration, the policy is the role of the commission, and we've delegated that and haven't risen to that level. And after insisting on that for years, we have made more progress on diving into policy and improving policy this year than we ever have in the 11 years that I've served on this commission. And I think that is good. The other is I think it's inappropriate to simply say, well, we have to keep rotating presidents through. If someone's doing a good job, we should reelect them. That's the way every city council and county commission operates. What happens is if you just simply say, well, I'll rotate through, then you basically are saying we're more of a rubber stamp. We don't really play this larger policy role. And that's what the voters elect us to do. We're elected to be policymakers. We have to dive in. And it is hard work. You have to read a lot of policy, and you have to have tough discussions. And we've had some tough discussions. And I credit Commissioner Pickering for helping to navigate us through that process. She did a brilliant job of us doing a work session to dive into all of our policy concerns that were raised early in the session, and then we gradually picked out some and focused in on several of them, and we made some very important improvements. We have to update our policies. That's what the public expects of us, and so that's why I am thrilled, and I think that her leadership on this has been recognized in the whole Treasure Valley, and that's why she was in fact selected for the elected leader of the year. And so I'm pleased. This is going to be my last year on the commission. No one should hold these positions of public power, whether it's elected or appointed, for more than 10 or 12 years. And so I look forward to it. put my whole heart and soul into this, and I can honestly say that I think Commissioner Pickering is the best president that I've experienced, including myself, on this commission during that time.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to echo Commissioner Hanson that those claims and assertions made by Commissioner McKinney and the way that he raised them are inappropriate. The reason that I nominated you, and I agree with, again, Commissioner Hanson's assessment, is, I feel really strongly that you have developed and fostered better relationships with our partner agencies, that you've shown leadership in listening to all the commissioners and staff and synthesizing that feedback to move things forward, that you've initiated a great number of things on behalf of the whole county, and that that reflects the community's needs, that you've shown up well in the community and spoken well on behalf of the district. I think that we're on a good trajectory and that you've been really accessible, and you've gone on site in my district and met with constituents with me, and I really appreciate that accessibility, and I believe that you run the meetings well. So those are the reasons that I nominated you.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, just a couple of things. Alexis gave me the courtesy of calling me up and asking me for my support, which I declined to give for only one reason, and that was that, and this is almost the exact words that I used with her, was that I felt that if the public thought there was enough leadership capacity to elect any one of the five of us to our position, then there should be no problem regardless of who served as president. And that's still how I feel. I would bring up one point that Commissioner McKinney made that I have probably sweat over more than just about anything else that I've worried about as a commissioner, and that is the fact that we represent the entire county and not just our districts. And just after listening to Commissioner McKinney, I thought through in my mind of everything that's going on projects-wise in this county, what has gone on and what has not gone on in years past, and why. And we watched for years even more construction going on in the city of Boise than there is today. And we watched projects be put off and put off and put off, and more money being spent elsewhere than in the city of Boise, even though they generate such a huge percentage of our revenues that almost seems crazy. But it happened, and it helped our roads and the quality of our roads to stay as high as it is. Right now, I can't think of a single district that doesn't have a lot going on in it. I don't know to the penny if it's equal in terms of dollars and cents, and I don't care if it is or not anyway. I just know that we're taking care of business on a countywide basis. And I know that, for instance, during COVID, we had several major projects that were scheduled for my district. And I was more than happy to offer to have those deferred until such time as we could get it done. And other projects took their place at that time. And so I'm sorry, I just don't believe that we have any hidden agenda for doing projects in our district. Some of the extra projects that may have been done within the city of Boise had to do with public safety, and those are always at the top of everyone's priority list. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldthorpe. I just want to make a quick comment. So this last year in 2023, thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for bringing up the session that we had to try and figure out what our policy priorities were as a commission. And I want to say I really prided myself on being a different type of ACHD commission president, and being that I was collaborative first, extremely transparent, and set that out from the get-go. And so this accusation of secret agenda items is pretty wild, considering we've got Commissioner Hanson and myself and Director Wong meeting weekly to present and work through the agenda, constantly communicating with our leadership team. I've been so impressed by their tremendous leadership, and meeting the needs of a very diverse and dynamic and complex county, and adapting with the shift of the commission as well. You guys have met this challenge and the request that we've made of you head on. So this accusation that there's some type of divide within leadership, I haven't seen that, and I don't think that that's the case. So happy to look into a lot of these things deeper with you if you were to have the conversation with me one-on-one, which that hasn't happened. But I'm really proud of the year that we've had, despite having the most deadly year on our roads in Ada County's history. We've led with change and progress and policy change, two of which you've approved and supported those policy changes. And we are putting in and investing. We brought in federal dollars, we brought in state legislative dollars to go towards these massive projects that we've needed for decades. So our budget's growing, we haven't taken property taxes, and we're doing what our communities are asking of us to do, which I think is tremendous and a reflection of the leadership, not just me, but on the commission as a whole. So we've got a lot at stake this year. Director Wong just presented the financial shortfall that we have just with Highway 16, for example. We've got a lot of things in the queue, and I really hope that we can keep this momentum going. We have a lot of work to do, and I hope that you'll support me in keeping that up. So is there any other thoughts on the issue? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on to the second item, appointment of treasurer and secretary.
Vice President.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm like just trying to get moving on to the next one. Vice President, excuse me.
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson.
I would nominate Commissioner Gold for Vice President.
I'll second that.
And I just wanted to say that since it's my last year, I don't think it's appropriate for me to hold a position, a leadership position on the commission, and I'm very impressed with Commissioner Gold's leadership. And so, as you know, it's my last year, so I'm going to be hopefully not too much of a rabble-rouser outside of leadership as I advocate for those things that I've been talking about for the last 11 years. So I would nominate Commissioner Gold.
Any other?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
is it, just to clarify, Commissioner Gold has been serving as vice president during the past year, correct?
No.
That's what I've been saying.
No.
Commissioner Hanson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm the Vice President.
Was there a second vice president? Is that what it was?
No, we didn't have a second Vice President.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Gold.
Thank you, you too.
All right, moving on to item number 2. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. The appointment of treasurer and secretary for the calendar year of 2024. Director Wong.
Madam President, Commissioners, congratulations, Madam President. Congratulations, Madam Vice President, and such. It is with the utmost honor and privilege that I have the great right to, as the Director of the Ada County Highway District, nominate 2 of our absolute superstars for reappointment to their current positions. First off, I couldn't imagine this organization in any form or fashion without the tremendous support of Stacy Spencer. She's been brilliant all year long, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me that she is the perfect fit. Don't yell at me. And such to continue her position as secretary of the board. Number 2, as I just recently shared with you, and thank you, Commissioner Pickering, for again going back to finance and such. You just heard the report. You'll see it formally next week. Sherman has moved mountains, and he will continue to move mountains because we have a lot of things in front of us going forward. So again, I could not imagine the district without the tremendous service of Sherwin-Pesca as our treasurer. So, commissioners, I urge you, and very respectfully urge you and graciously support the nominations and elections of both Stacy and Sherwin.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, if I might, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Sherwin-Pesca as treasurer and Stacy Spencer as secretary for this calendar year.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Congratulations. All right. All right, the third item is the 8th and 9th Street Pavement and Pedestrian Improvement Project. This is a consultant design PSA approval. There is a request for approval. Justin, you're up.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Projects here at the Highway District. I'm here to briefly present on the 8th and 9th Street Design Services Professional Services Agreement that is here today for your approval. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the history on these two corridors. It's pretty extensive. Discussions surrounding 8th and 9th Street and also safe access to Longfellow Elementary School has been a topic at ACHD since 2017, at least, probably before that, but that's when we kind of officially recognized this area as in need of some project support. In 2019, the project was added into the Integrated 5-Year Work Plan, primarily focused on the Longfellow Elementary area. And some crossings associated with that area. Shortly thereafter, we had some interaction and petitions from the neighbors along 9th Street asking for a broader project, something larger and more comprehensive looking at the corridor. We had a walk with commissioners and the project manager in 2021 in response to some of those petitions. You'll recall we also moved forward with a concept study on 8th Street, but this is that section south of the section we're talking about today. This was a very detailed public outreach effort, lots of conversations with the neighbors, and there was a period where we thought, let's pause on the northern 8th and 9th Street segments while we really focus in on this section. The commission did end up adopting that concept study, so we have clarity there. And after that was adopted, we are now re-engaging on the northern sections. Recently, we had a walk with commissioners again and neighbors on 9th Street specifically, which I attended along with the director and Ryan Head, another deputy director here at ACHD, and several commissioners. And then in 2023, the project was kind of coalesced and consolidated into this following project, which is here before you today, which is the North Boise Pavement and Pedestrian Improvements. It essentially is 8th and 9th Streets, a comprehensive look at those two corridors together. They really do operate in tandem and are connected, and we thought it would be best to look at them together, which brings us today before you with this design contract. Which essentially is the start of a process. This process will include extensive public outreach, the look at concept designs and different options for all of the possibilities on these corridors. I'll just kind of show you what we're thinking here. This is a general map of the corridors. You can see the intersecting streets are included because if we're doing pavement work on 8th and 9th and you have this one block in between, we thought it would be wise to look at those also at the same time. So this is a pretty large project when it comes to lineal feet of sidewalk, asphalt, however you want to talk about it, and which leads us today to this design contract, and which is before you for your approval. So with that, I'm glad to answer any questions you may have. I don't write these. It's the project manager, and he's here today to help us with any specific questions, but I'll do my best.
Thanks, Justin. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting this done. I think we've talked about 8th Street enough times that I was worried about my hair going gray or falling out before anything happened there. And it's something that to me is very important as well. And you mentioned the safety around the school, and that is absolutely the way it should be. And I would hope that we can, in the next year or so, analyze every single school in this county to make sure that the zones around those schools are safe.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I did email staff yesterday with some questions, and Director Wong got back to me. And so I just want to say, so that neighbors are aware that, you know, some of the questions that have come up through our work sessions regarding getting input on speed and getting input on types of traffic calming treatments will be collected through this public process after, you know, as this moves forward. And so I just wanted, you know, neighbors to be assured of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Madam President. So the issue that arose with the 8th Street project when we did it is the notion that those two streets were originally, when they used to be two-way, they were fine. Then we made them this couplet, but now we have approved, so one was going north one way and one going south the other way, one-way streets, multiple lanes. Now we've eliminated that as to 8th Street. That's going to become more of a pedestrian bicycle with only one lane going through one lane of car traffic. So the notion of this couplet doesn't work anymore. The other is that the most significant contributing factor to 9th Street being the place where everybody gets to in order to make all their long trip, even though there's lots of other streets adjacent to them that they could travel down in order to get further south, is because we have one way between Union and State Street. Seems to me the consultant's going to look at that and say that factor is still always going to be there if you continue to have one way, and I don't think one way works north of State Street anymore. We've gotten rid of the criteria of the need for that. It's going by a private school, it's going by a public school, and that same issue as we've had on 16th and 15th is significant. And I think the scope of this project should go from State Street north and not from 4th Street or Union Street. It should be from State Street. Now, I would like this to go back and we include State Street because it's like the tip of the funnel. You say, well, we're going to look at all the other stuff in this funnel, but we're not going to address the main contributing factor. And it seems to me we're just avoiding it. And this is the time we should include it. Now, the consultant may come up and say, okay, we've looked at it, as we've studied, we've talked to the public, we've talked to all the same people who go to those schools, and they're fine with leaving it one way, which may be their recommendation, or they have options. But I think we have to address that 9th Street shifts from being one way to two way just past the co-op, and we have to address that. So that's why I would like to see the scope of this work go to State Street. We don't need to worry about 8th Street from Fort to State because we've already decided what that's going to look like. But 9th Street, we do need to decide what it looks like. And we need some recommendations from the consultants because it's such a huge factor into how 9th Street functions north of that. So that's what I would like to see happen.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. So Justin, can you explain, because I think I've got some of those similar questions about, our last work session when we talked about this, just making sure, understanding what types of questions and treatments and options are going to be explored with this contract. So can you just speak to could we address in this existing scope what Commissioner Hanson just shared? And can you also explain just some of the, just really high level, what pieces and parts we're exploring within 8th and 9th Street as part of this scope and contract?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioners, I'll do my best to answer those questions. When it comes to the project extents and the description provided in the scope of work, what's before you today is a design contract. So the intention is that we're moving into the design of the project. We'll complete that design and then move towards construction based on the years in front of us. I think where staff's kind of standing on this is that segment of 9th Street to the one-way segment, which is outside of the extent of this specific project. When it comes into the conversion of a street like that from two-way to one-way, we feel like that really would be better addressed as kind of a standalone question. I understand there's a feeling that everything is connected and there's ultimately everything is connected one way or the other. But I think to significantly change the function of 9th Street from the north end into downtown, which is what I believe Commissioner Hanson is referencing, would require a lot more analysis, coordination with the city, and kind of traffic analysis that is not included in this scope of work. And so that's my response to that. It's not that could never be addressed. I think it was looked at during the 8th and 9th Street discussion. I mean, 9th Street, the commission, if you remember, asked us to go back, look at alternatives for 9th Street. We did that. There was discussions about 8th and 9th Street together, south of Fort and in the area that the commission has raised today. I think those questions were not all answered, but they were largely answered, I think, at least in the short to midterm when the commission chose to focus the bicycle and pedestrian facilities on 8th Street. So that would be my response.
So thank you for that, Justin. And I appreciate your point about, that is a bigger conversation, right? But I'm just worried that could have a big impact on the design that the consultant would put forward. And so do you not think that is a concern or would have a big impact into what we would come up with?
Madam President, members of the commission, because the section of 9th Street that we're talking about today is already two-way, we're not proposing to change it to one-way. So it's already functioning as a two-way street. I think the larger design considerations when it comes from the changes if you're converting it from one-way to two-way or vice versa. Because we have an intersection at 9th and Fort essentially that would allow us to transition one way or the other. I don't think it closes any doors. I think all of the traffic calming elements, the pedestrian crossing elements, all of the things that we are contemplating for 9th Street as part of the project that's before you today would work in even if 9th Street to the south was, let's say, converted to a two-way street. I don't think they're tied in a way where it would not allow us to move forward on this project.
And then could you speak to the potential timeline? Because I'm wondering, because we need a schedule. Director Wong has had staff reach out to the city of Boise to get on a joint meeting with them. This and I think some conversations around 15th and 6th Streets are really timely and applicable. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way that this conversation that and the deeper study that you're talking about, Commissioner Hanson, could be done in parallel or maybe just a little bit behind maybe this contract. Is that timeline somewhat synergistic at all or not really? If we were to move forward on those conversations.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the commission, I think at this point, just, speaking of the adopted budget, there is no funding in this year's adopted budget in FY24 to explore the potential conversion of 9th Street to two-way or 15th and 16th. That's a topic that has come up, and I don't know exactly where it's landed in the integrated 5-year work plan. I believe we added some concepts a few years out on that. Ultimately, those types of projects, If the commission chooses to accelerate that, we would take that direction typically through the integrated 5-year work plan. I think, ultimately projects have to have kind of a start and an end point. You got to choose. It's always not ideal. Sometimes there's questions that will come up that are challenging. But I think the conversion question is really, it's a standalone question. That's a big decision. And we to this point, I don't know if we have clarity from the city of Boise on their opinion. I don't believe I've heard that from their staff or council. I think getting some of that input first on their appetite for that type of conversion would be at least a data point for the commission to consider. So I don't know if that answers all your questions, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, a thought, maybe a request, because we won't be considering the lower part of Ninth, but considering the fact that it might be somewhat similar to the scope of this particular design that we're asking for. I'm not an expert, but I'm asking, could we have our project manager, who will be stunned when I make this question or request, watch this from a standpoint closely enough that perhaps that we can take the remainder of 9th Street and do a design ourselves in-house without having to spend another $1 million.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think there's options for that. I'd have to rely on Ryan's team for that. Ryan that manages the in-house design section. They've been tasked with a lot of other things related to LPI and safety projects and many other things, which I believe their plate is pretty full.
We're talking about some time.
Down the road. I think all of those possibilities are out there. It's just a matter of allocation of time and resources.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gold.
Justin, can you speak to maybe like timeline and budget impacts of this scope versus an additional project for that portion of 9th that we're talking about, or versus delaying the entire project in order to add that portion on?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Gold, glad to do that. So, putting together a scope of work like this, there's quite a bit of work that goes into it, as you can imagine, negotiation between ACHD, the consultant, to come up with the scope of work, the cost associated with that effort. I think adding in the lower portion, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that today. I think if that's the direction of the commission, that there's a desire to move that way, I would need to go back to the consultant. We would need to bring back a new document, because I think it's going to have a pretty significant impact on the cost of the project, and the timeline also. Because I think if we are to go down that road and we want to wrap it all into one project, we're going to have to essentially extend the initial phase of the project, or the concept phase, or the planning phase, to allow for a more robust discussion related to the conversion of 9th Street. That's, as I say, we've said, it's a big decision, and we want to make sure that you and the city have all the data associated with that, and the traffic analysis and the potential implications. And so all of that would need to be worked into this scope. And all of that is just, once again, time and resources and money ultimately. So we would have to work all that in to this. I think one concern I have with that is the project becomes, the project could potentially be, the traffic calming elements, the school safety issues that we've identified already for the upper portion of 9th Street and 8th Street. I would be concerned that some of that might get overwhelmed in the conversation about the conversion. It's not impossible, but, sometimes it's better to take the issues, break them up a little bit, and deal with those issues separately. When we try to do it all together, remember, you have people that live all the way up 9th Street by Camel's Back Park, and then you have business owners and other, and there's a few churches and schools and other things on that south section, and gathering all that public input and gathering some type of cohesive something to bring back to the commission would be challenging, not impossible. We can do what the commission asks us to do, but I think there could be some benefit to breaking that question of conversion out into a future project.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I have a comment and a question. The comment first, I'm inclined to think that it would be unwise for the commission to try to pull this back and let's do something different. That would be just another example of denigrating or disregarding the expertise of our staff. Likewise, it makes perfect sense to solve problems one at a time rather than try to push them all together as if they're all one problem. Yeah, of course the roads all connect, but let's solve the problems one at a time. And so I'm inclined to agree absolutely with what Mr. Lucas has said. And furthermore, each time we, throw a wrench in the works and delay projects or push them around, we cause all kinds of extra work and trouble for the staff and the agency that in the end just makes things cost more when they don't have to. And on that, let me get to my question. Justin, looking at the scope of this project, if we had to spitball it today, what's the kind of ballpark cost we're talking about when it comes to construction? I know we don't have we don't have all the details, but what are we looking at approximately?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I think at this point we're looking in a range of $8 to $10 million. That will depend on some of the decisions related to traffic calming elements. I mean, there's bulb outs. If you start moving into mini roundabouts or raised intersections, there's costs associated with the decisions, construction costs associated with some of those decisions. And so I think that range of 8 to 10 million in today's dollars is a kind of a target point we're looking at. But once again, through this design process, we start to nail down what this really is, and then we're able to nail down the cost a little bit more.
Is it fairly likely or unlikely that we'll also be including repaving some of those cross streets?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I think it's fairly likely, especially when we start doing curb work at the corners.
Okay.
Some of these side streets have parabolic crowns, and so when you're flattening essentially making the intersection flatter with a reconstruction, you have to tie that back into a side street. And sometimes if you're on 8th and 9th, you're just chasing it right to the middle and you end up repaving the entire side street. So that's kind of what we're thinking and why we included that analysis in the scope of work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions, comments? Commissioner Gold?
Yeah, I just appreciate Commissioner Hansen's concerns, and I don't disagree that parts of the network outside of the scope of this project definitely factors in and creates pressure and impact on the traffic flow of these streets. So I don't disagree with that. Also, as Justin pointed out, this has been many years in the work, and the neighbors have wanted these traffic calming measures to move forward, and I also think that that's important to keep this project on its timeline. Maybe as part of this public outreach, we can ask through our survey process about opinions on a two-way conversion on 9th, as well as moving forward with those conversations with the city, so that we can get, I guess, a second part of this or a separate project that addresses that part of 9th kind of in the works as well. But, my preference would be to continue to move forward on this portion, knowing that other pieces of the network are going to need to be addressed moving forward too. And I just want to say to Commissioner Goldthorpe's point about the design costs, he and I have requested a work session on the design consultation fees so that we can have that discussion as a commission too.
Okay. This is an action item. That's what I was going to ask, is if Commissioner Coulter, do you have something to say?
And I was gonna make a motion.
Okay,
We
do
do
you want to
have-
make sure, is there anyone here that would like to testify on this issue?
We have Alexa signed up as the representative of the neighborhood association,
Welcome. Come on
and
up.
as well as somebody else too.
Yeah, please state your name and address. Are you representing the neighborhood association?
Yes.
Okay, so then you have 5 minutes. Isn't that correct, Stacey?
Wow,
10?
that's
Oh, up to 10. Okay.
awesome.
Thanks,
I'm
Alexa.
not used to that. Okay. Hi there. Good afternoon, Madam President and Commissioners. My name is Alexa Reutman, and I live on 924 North 8th Street, right across from the co-op. I am a board member of the North End Neighborhood Association, and I'm here today representing the neighborhood. So clearly there's strong community support for both 8th and 9th Street. So I just want to reiterate really mainly why I'm here is because we as a neighborhood and a neighborhood association want to show support as well as collaboration with ACHD staff as well as the consultants. I forgot that I have like 10 minutes. I won't take all of 10 minutes, but I'm going to take my time. So with that being said, the neighborhood has many opportunities for ACHD staff to collaborate with us. We have monthly meetings that happen on the last Tuesday of the month. We also have a mobility summit coming up in May. That is it's our fourth annual mobility summit, previously known as the Transportation Summit, but we're working to make it a little bit more inclusive. And we're hoping for more opportunities for engagement with ACHD in that as well. Great. So one of the things, there's two things that I kind of had questions on after reviewing the scope of work and the plan for engagement with the community. Seems to be about an 18-month timeline, with public involvement meetings at 30% and 75% of the design. And so my question there is there any opportunity for any public involvement with the neighborhood to start before that? We feel like 30% is a little further into the design, where we would like to be able to have conversations with the consultant and ACHD staff beforehand so we could work more efficiently to design for what we all want as a community. As well as the scope mentioned that there are 10 contact meetings for stakeholders. So I was just wanting some clarification on, is the neighborhood association and neighborhood members, are they a part of that, or is it other larger stakeholders in the community like business owners and such? The other thing that I'm hoping, as well as the neighborhood, I think would really benefit from, is that ACHD will employ temporary treatments during this process. So temporary treatments having proved to be effective in familiarizing residents and drivers with upcoming changes, facilitating better understanding and behavioral adjustments. These interventions can provide valuable insights into the success of different designs before their permanent implementation. And since design influences behavior, our goal is to identify the most effective street design that encourages drivers to slow down and prioritize pedestrian safety. And just to speak to that, as a resident of 8th Street, I do walk it every single day with my dog. And I see a lot of wild behavior from cars. And with that on Rezague, I never know how to say it, but on 8th Street, I have multiple times gotten in the middle of the street to stop cars to let kids cross. And that is with a pedestrian sign right there with the flashing yellow light. And I believe that there is even a speed bump in the middle of that block to slow cars down, if not that exact block, potentially the block beforehand. So just like some serious concerns about that. And I think that the temporary treatment would really be helpful in helping guide, all transportation users in how to better interact with pedestrians. With that being said, thank you so much for your support on this and your concern, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Alexa. I want to make sure Justin or Seth can answer some of these questions. So are there any immediate questions for
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson?
Alexa, thank you. I just want your input from the Neighborhood Association standpoint.
Mhm.
You were involved in our discussion on the 8th Street design from State to Union.
Yes.
And raised the issue of concerns on that segment of 9th. Do you have some confidence that we'll move ahead on that segment of 9th if we don't include it in the scope of this?
Are you talking about south of Fort?
South of Fort.
I
four
think
blocks.
it's a very important discussion. It is really confusing, and I would say with the improvements that are happening on 8th Street on the adjacent area, I think it would be really important to address that. Confidence, I do have confidence in ACHD and the commission. I just hope that it is brought up again in the future. And I will say that, I mean, this kind of goes, that whole 4-block area is really intense. I live, I live right there. I see people driving from 8th Street on a one-way going past Fort Street, past Union, that end up having to take a right into the co-op and do all sorts of things. I've seen some really terrifying near misses on Fort and 9th as a cyclist and as a driver, as a car driver. So I think that I agree. I would like this to be moved forward, but I do think that it is very concerning, the 9th Street, Fort to State. And I hope that that gets taken a look at. Thank you for the question.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
It just occurred to me that with the new process that we have beginning this month, as far as the commissioners visiting with a pair of staff members about the projects that are coming in their particular districts, that might offer an ideal opportunity to create a little bit more collaboration between the commission and the neighborhood association, so that you won't have to worry about what happens between now and the 30%.
Thank you so much. And before, I should have said thank you, Commissioner Hanson and Madam President, but thank you so much for that, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
So if there are any other questions, I'm going to invite staff to kind of speak to some of your questions there. So
thank you so much.
No problem. So you have what I calculated was 3 specific questions: is the 30% into design, the 10 contact meetings, like what do we mean by that, and then the temporary treatments. Did I miss anything? No. Okay. So Justin, thank you. Can you speak to those?
Madam President, members of the commission, your staff has thought a lot about this, and I'm glad those 10 contact meetings were brought up, because the intent of those 10 contact meetings, although it's not explicitly laid out, is to reach out to stakeholder groups just like the North End Neighborhood Association. So it would be our anticipation that a meeting like that would occur with the Neighborhood Association before the 30% design is completed. And we would collaborate with the Neighborhood Association in kind of like a listening session to get a feeling for what they're thinking. And then we would incorporate their stakeholder feedback into the 30% design process. We have to have, there's kind of the more direct engagement with neighborhood associations and citizens, which occurs throughout the entire project, which has occurred a lot up to this point. And then there's the very formal surveys, and we put it online and we let everybody see it, where some people feel more comfortable doing that, some people have more direct engagement. So we kind of do all that together to really bring back a plan that has had a lot of outreach. So there's that question. I think that covers the 10 contact meetings and the 30% question. When it comes to the temporary installations, we've received this feedback a few times. It's not I'll be direct. It's not included in the scope of work as it sits today. Now, I think through the feedback process with the neighborhood, if we get that type of feedback, it's not something that we would necessarily just say no to. We could include some, examples of how to do this. We have found that those types of pilot projects or examples, depending on the situation, sometimes they can be really effective. Sometimes they can create a lot of controversy, and maybe that's the intent. And so I think we're looking at that. We're thinking of how to execute that in a way that will best suit the project. And although it's not explicitly described here in the scope, we do have to make sure whatever we do doesn't impact the drainage concerns that exist out in these areas. There's a lot going on when it comes to drainage, the drainage system. And we want to make sure that if we're doing something from a temporary perspective and people think of hay bales and things like that, we can't, anything you put out there, it catches water and moves it in a certain direction. And we have to be very careful with that from an environmental perspective, considering the unique nature of this area and the complicated drainage system that exists. So I would just put that out there as a caveat. So I hope that answers that question.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Complicated and ancient.
Yes.
Very.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold?
Yeah, I think that, feedback I've heard from the neighborhood, and the neighborhood association is that, they don't want any treatments to be precluded from consideration or to have any predetermined, traffic calming treatment. So they just want to be involved early in the process. And thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe, for bringing up those monthly staff meetings, because I do think that will give us an opportunity to touch base more often and make sure that everybody's involved in being heard. So,
Okay, thanks, Justin. Oh, Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, so I guess I didn't get a clear thing on use of temporary installations. She asked her, how and why wouldn't the scope also make reference to, this is where, suggestions made from me is not ever intended, as I think the staff knows, it's not intended to suggest that the staff isn't doing a great job. You are doing a great job. I think this is a really good reason why we should have public hearings on scopes, because ideas come from the public to maybe ways of improve the scope. We have really detailed information on geotechnical and hydrology and surveying and utilities, but we don't have the same kind of detail on public meetings, and we have no references to the use of temporary installations and then gathering data from those temporary installations to feed the design decisions or design recommendations. So that's sort of a long way of saying on that last one, can we get that? And how can we be assured moving forward on this scope that we would have that? It seems like it's such a logical thing. We're doing this on areas where we don't necessarily have projects yet, but we've put in temporary installations after chip sealing.
Madam President, members of the commission, I'll try to be clear. As of right now, the scope of work does not include any funding for our consultant to do temporary installations, to monitor those installations, to provide data back to us associated with that monitoring. If that is something that comes out of this process, I think it'd be good to essentially get through that 30% design and get a feeling for what it would even be. And if the commission at that point wants to pursue that, it would likely require some type of addendum to the contract, and then we could pursue that. It's not something we've included in all of our projects up to this point. It's one of those things that's hard to nail down exactly what it's going to be until you have a feeling for what the options are. And do we do different options at different intersections to get different feedback, and how does that impact the operations and the drainage and the other things I've mentioned? I wish it was as easy as just throwing a few things out there and watching it. It doesn't quite work out that way in the reality. The one we're working on right now on Rose Hill, you remember there was a outreach process and a design, and we're going to be installing all of that with a contractor, and there's availability of certain materials, and there's a lot that goes into it, and if that's something the commission wants to pursue, I think it would be best addressed after seeing the initial recommendations that come out through the public involvement and the 30% design.
Justin? Okay, is there anyone else that would like to testify?
We have Mr. Brett Stiles signed up.
Welcome, Mr. Stiles. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
How many minutes?
3.
3 it is. Yeah, my name's Brett Stiles, and I live at 1707 North 9th. Yeah, there's a lot here, but I'd like to comment on the 8th and 9th Street Pavement and Pedestrian Improvements Project. I believe I have a unique perspective on this topic, especially as it pertains to pedestrian safety. So, 13 years ago when I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my first wife, Lisa, was killed by a reckless driver. She was a pedestrian pushing our 2 youngest children in a bright yellow jogging stroller. A young man in a tall SUV was trying to make a right onto a busy road. Whether he entirely failed to look right, or whether he failed to see Lisa over the tall hood as she entered the crosswalk from the adjacent sidewalk, his momentary recklessness upended many lives. Before being rolled up into the front passenger side wheel well, Lisa struggled to save our children, aged 3 years and 14 months. The judge at the criminal trial put it best during sentencing. Lisa's last act on this earth was to desperately work to keep the stroller upright and out of the path of the car. Her death was a sacrifice to her children. Lisa was remarkably accomplished, having graduated with joint law and social work degrees. She worked as a children's legal advocate. This accident robbed the world of her promise and skill. It robbed our 3 children of their mother. It robbed Lisa's family of a daughter, sister, and aunt. It robbed me of my wife. I was very suddenly thrust into a position in which I had to single-handedly raise these children. This accident robbed the young man, the driver, of his freedom and future. There was a passenger in the car who testified that he and Lisa exchanged glances, presumably giving her the false impression that the driver was aware that she was entering the crosswalk. That person walks around every day knowing that his delay in alerting the driver cost my wife her life. The young man's family has had to endure the misery of and expense of his trials, incarceration, and a lifelong criminal record. The accident impacted the bystanders and witnesses. The first person to attend to Lisa was a 15-year-old girl who testified she sat beside Lisa's broken body, holding her hand while waiting for first responders. All of this is to say is that the road design decisions that ACHD makes for Ada County, and more specifically for my street, are not abstract. I am living proof that these decisions matter and must be constantly challenged, especially since every person in this room will agree that safety is paramount. 71% of vehicles sold in Idaho in recent years are pickups or SUVs. Vehicles with hood heights that are 40 inches or higher are 45% more likely to kill a pedestrian than those of a smaller or lower vehicle. Pedestrians sorry, should I stop?
Just finish your thought.
Okay, very good. Sorry. Vehicles with high ground clearances have obvious uses and benefits in Idaho, but again, since we all agree that safety is paramount, how are these road designs being updated to accommodate vehicles of increased weight and diminished pedestrian sight lines? Driver behavior has never been worse. Cars have never been more dangerous to pedestrians, and unsurprisingly, pedestrian accidents are more frequent year after year. While driver behavior is not obviously enforced by this commission, we all understand how road design can help to curtail speeding and recklessness. When a supermajority of 8th and 9th Street residents go on record indicating there's a problem, I don't understand why this commission isn't rushing to help us address our concerns with urgency. And I think that that's something that was recently addressed. 2 cars colliding on 9th Street will almost certainly result in no physical injuries. Absolutely. A car colliding with a pedestrian will almost certainly result in many lives changing, whether for the pedestrian, the driver, or for their families. That's why road design that ensures pedestrians are able to safely travel on our streets should be this commission's focus.
Thank you, Mr. Stiles.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think you probably already understand that the majority of this commission feels exactly the same way you did.
I appreciate that.
One of us made the comment when we approved our budget that if we couldn't get support from some of our partners to enforce traffic laws, we would, and that's through design. And so that's coming, and that's happening right now as you stand there. One of the reasons why there hasn't been a lot happening with 8th Street is because of the absolute lack of agreement as to what treatments should happen there. And I've sat through every single one of those hearings. You may have been here for one or two of them, I don't know. I know Alexa has. and it's just, it's resulted in stalemates between all of the stakeholders. And if anything is going to happen there, this commission's going to have to take the bull by the horns to make it happen. And that I don't sense there's an appetite for. But we do understand the need, and we do respond quickly when something unfortunate happens. And I don't class what happened to your family as unfortunate, not at all.
Sure.
In fact, every time someone gets injured here, one or more of us reacts immediately to make sure that whatever can be done to prevent it happening again in that area is done. And I know the last time that was done, decisions were made within 30 minutes. And that will continue.
I very much appreciate that instinct. And I think that I would just implore you that instead of being very appropriately reactive, as you described right now, that in this instance, we have a great opportunity to be very appropriately proactive.
No disagreement.
Okay. Well, Mr. Stiles, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I know that the neighborhood has a wealth of amazing folks that will be plugged in. And Alexa, thank you for being here. And we're really excited to have you guys plugged into the design, but especially with folks like you, Mr. Stiles, and that experience that hopefully you can participate in all of the opportunities that we afford you to weigh in, because we definitely want to prevent tragedies like that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, is there anyone else, Ms. Stacy?
I do not have anybody else signed up.
Is there anyone online that would like to testify on this issue? Anyone else in person? Okay, well, with that, we're going to go ahead and close public comment. Commissioners, is there a motion? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, I would make a motion that we approve item number 3, the request for approval on the 8th and 9th Street pavement and pedestrian improvement projects, with the caveat that at the same time, we are going from between 0 and 30%, that our staff, with no additional cost from a consultant, analyze the opportunities for temporary traffic calming.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Is there a second?
Madam President?
Discussion, Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear what staff has to say about that condition that Commissioner Goldthorpe has put in his motion.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, this is temporary treatments fall under my group, and so I'm happy to respond to that. We are already looking at what treatments we can do on the road in the interim. I'm happy to partner with Justin's team. It's one team, right? But Justin's team, as they go through this, to if there are certain treatments that they would like to have placed on the road, to use resources to put those in place.
So you're okay with that condition?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold.
I would just maybe not necessarily add to the motion, but add the comment that we move forward in our discussions with the city as we're having these larger conversations about 1 to 2 way conversion, that we include that portion of 9th Street in that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Commissioner Henson?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I appreciated Commissioner Goldthorpe's motion, and so I'll support it. I do just want to point out this is the third project that's in front of us where we haven't really addressed that 4-block segment of 9th Street. We dealt with it on 8th Street, said we'll deal with it separately. When we had the crossing at Franklin, on the Franklin neighborhood project, we have a raised crosswalk, but we'll deal with the rest of 9th separately, and on this, we'll deal with it separately. So I think there is a commitment. We have to move forward on dealing with it separately. I think the urgency is really important. I really appreciate the speaker's comments because and I would ask that we do this more often to put the scope of work in front so the public can look at it, because we get into enormous detail on geotechnical and surveying and utilities and hydrology and pavement condition, all because it's a road to handle vehicles, but we don't get into the kind of specifics that we should in terms of the pedestrian safety. We have measurements for level of service, level of traffic stress, and that should be in the scope of work. And I know it's kind of, a lot of this is boilerplate, but it should be in there. And so I'm hoping we can transition to more specific, so when we're looking at it, there's an assurance to the people we represent that yes, these will be addressed at the various stages as designs come up, with as much attention to detail as there is to the geotechnical and the drainage and so forth. The urgency is real on this street and on other streets. Warm Springs has been around for 8 miles of it. We've got 1 mile of 8th and 9th, so that's 2 miles. So Warm Springs is 8 miles long since it became ACHD's a responsibility and no longer a state highway, and we still haven't addressed that issue. And so, and I'm going to keep raising it, whether I'm a commissioner or not. And the problem is that we just have to rely on the same pool of property taxes in order to do that. We were able to spend $21 million to expand a road in another part of the county with impact fees, but we aren't allowed to use impact fees even though there's growth and development all over downtown, any of those fees to help us get this. So it's all out of the same pool of property tax that we use for everything else. And that's one of the frustrations. It's hard to make it urgent when a big chunk of the reason we need to make it urgent, our growth, we can't use those resources. I just want to make that point again, and I'll probably make it a few more times this year.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 4, the Cloverdale Road, Amity Road to Victory Road, and Cloverdale Road and Amity Road intersection consultant agreement approval, ACHD project number 523018 and 323020. This is a request for approval. Justin.
Madam President, members of the commission, thank you. Once again, before you is a consultant design agreement. We call it a professional services agreement for this project that was just stated. This agreement is with 6 Mile Engineering for the amount of approximately $1.1 million. The project is, it's essentially 2 projects. It's a roadway expansion project on South Cloverdale Road, south of Victory, and a roundabout project at the location of Cloverdale and Amity Road. Once again, this is a pretty large project out in the southwest Boise area. You can see a development pattern developing still out in here, and much of it is already developed. And the project is for you for your approval today, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, as this goes forward, I don't know that you could answer this question right now, but just east of the intersection on Amity Road was where that young 7-year-old boy was killed. And it looks to me like that red line goes over to where that might have happened. And I know there's utility considerations and everything else there to fix that gap. And I would urge that be looked at as this project gets designed.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yeah, we'll look at the project's extents and ensure that if there's any gap in that area you're describing, that we'll fill that gap.
Oh, there are.
Well, but I would go a step further, Commissioner Goldthorpe, if you don't mind, because I know that we have to have a start line and an end spot, right? Of what we're talking about in terms of a project. But what is extraordinarily aggravating, I think, to all parties is if we were to stop just short of completing an entire gap, right? And so my point would be, if as you guys work through this, if we need to have a budget adjustment or contract, whatever, we want to make sure that we fix an entire segment if it makes sense, but we don't want to have those types of gaps be continually created because we're like, that's just too long of a stretch to consider in this concept. So
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Madam President, I just want to point out that even though there's reference in the Collister and the 8th and 9th one to level of traffic stress, I can't find it in this one. So is the assumption that that's not a criteria for determining, or is it we've already taken care of it because we have the multi-use lanes and so we don't need a reference in, even though, and we're just going to have one crossing. So just wanted to sort of get the thinking behind not including that description in the scope of work.
Madam President, members of the commission, so the livable streets performance measures are referenced under ACHD standards in the scope of work. So they are there along with all of the other standards that the commission has asked us to include. When it comes to the crossings, one crossing location was clearly identified as part of the scoping of this project, but it's not uncommon that other crossing locations are identified through the public involvement process. And so that by no means are we closing the door on additional crossings in this segment. We like to locate them where people will use them, and that typically comes out through the public involvement process. So I can commit that we will look at other crossings as they are brought up through the public process.
Just to follow up, so this is a major arterial. It's going to be even busier as we expand it, and there are a number of cross streets you can legally cross, whether there's a crosswalk or not, at any cross street. But because of its function to move, its primarily function is to move traffic at various speeds up north and south, will we be incorporating prohibitions against crossing? In other words, you have to actually create a barrier to prevent crossings so that people don't cross. And you've seen those in other locations. We actually erect a physical barrier to prevent crossings at otherwise legal crossings.
Madam President, members of the commission, it's not ACHD's typical practice to construct crossing barriers. We do try and provide controlled crossings, especially of 5-lane roads, at regular intervals that will be used by the public. And as I said, that's often driven by the location of schools, the connectivity between neighborhoods, and other crossings. In Idaho, you can cross at an intersection, and so they may not be controlled, but they are legal crossings. We don't provide a barrier for those.
Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, just to remind the commission from what Justin said about adding in possible crossings, that's exactly what we did on the Maple Grove segment.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Is there anyone that would like to testify on this issue, Stacey?
I don't have anyone signed up.
Okay. All right. Well, commissioners.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I would make a motion that we approve item number 4, which is the Cloverdale Road, Amity Road to Victory Road, and the Cloverdale and Amity intersection, the consultant agreement.
Second.
All right, moving second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to public communications. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time? Okay, we'll roll right into our post-commission agenda. We've got a work session on our ACHD new website, Design and Overview. Welcome, Shandy.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners. I am just here. I don't have a formal presentation. I just want to show you guys the new website. I'm hoping it's not the first time you've seen it. You've been able to go on and play around with it. But I just wanted to walk you through some of the design elements and how we got to where we got to and why. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I do have, I know part of my team is here, but I do think that Aaron's probably out talking to the representative from the neighborhood association. But I also have a couple of people online. So any questions that you've got, we will be able to either answer them today or get you an answer. But just to walk you through, I just want to remind all of you that this was a very involved process, and we really relied on the community to help us get to where we are today. So we did that in a number of ways. So we had focus groups that our consultant did, that we included members of our community that commute in a variety of ways. We had members of our community that rely on our website to get permits. We had members of our advisory committees, and they were all part of focus groups to help explain how they use the website, what the issues were with the old website, what they liked about the old website. And then in addition to that, we did what is called a navigation test. So typically you only do one navigation test, but our first one failed. And well, it technically passed, but we didn't like how much it passed by. We wanted it to be better. So we did actually a second navigation test. So we sent those out to the community. Anybody was able to participate. And just in case you don't know what that is, essentially we gave them a variety of tasks to do on the website. And they were just shown navigation bars, and they showed us how they would get there. And then Granicus, our consultant, evaluated that to see, did they get to the right place? Did they get there immediately and directly, or did they eventually get there? And if they eventually got there, what path were they taking to get there? How were they using the website? Or did they not get there at all? And so what we've come up with was based on those navigation tests to find out how are people really using the website. Our website previously was fantastic for the amount of time that it was up, but we outgrew it. And it was also being used in a way that made a lot of sense internally to our staff and those that understood our organizational chart. But we really felt like it didn't make sense for the community to have to know that if they were wanting a speed study or a traffic study in their area, that fell under development and technical services. They didn't understand that. We didn't feel like it was fair for them to have to navigate the website and try to figure that out based on our organizational chart. So that has changed drastically, and that's really the biggest change that you'll see. So this is what we call our main navigation, and we did that based on the navigation tests. We've also included things in multiple areas. So things that are very common for people to try to get to, employment, our telesystem. We've also included those in different ways. So employment, there's a lot of psychology behind words, and employment draws a lot of people in. Careers draws some people in. The word jobs draws some people in. So what we've tried to do is include all three different ways to say, come work for us. And we've included these buttons in multiple areas. Same with Tell Us. For people that are just moving here, they have no idea what Tell Us is. And so we've included Tell Us, we've included Report It, we've included Report an Issue, and we've added them in multiple areas so people can really get to them quickly. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but this top navigation is customizable, and we plan to customize it with everything that's happening in real time. It'll change between seasons, it'll change between major projects that we're having, everything along those lines. This is also true with these buttons right here. So these will also change based on seasons, what our operators are doing. The things that will probably always remain up here are jobs, reporting an issue, and then projects as well. So this portion right here is something that is what we call Spotlight. So if we have a major project coming up that we want to get more public involvement for, we might throw that one right here. Right now it's it leads people to our subscribe page, which has been really successful for us. This is one of my favorite features of the new website. So this is called a services tool. It's really, in my mind, an action tool. So we say, I want to, and they can choose whatever the action is that they're trying to do. I want to report an issue, it could have a drop down here. This is totally customizable. We can make it whatever it is. And then this box adapts based on what it is that they're trying to do. And then this button will lead them exactly where they're wanting to be. So they can get to where they're wanting to be by searching, which a lot of people do. And that search function is really, really helpful on this new website. They can get there from the main navigation. They can get there to the hotspots based on these, or they can search based on, this is what I'm trying to do, take me there, which I think this is such a great new feature for our residents and customers, that they do not have to try to figure out where anything is. They can just say, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? Our news is updated as everything goes out and is prominently displayed on our website, on our homepage. Events and meetings. So this is new. We've obviously always had alerts for when we're having commission meetings, but the nice thing about having it on here on the front page is that now we can include, we're going to be at a neighborhood association meeting. We are going to have an open house going on, and all of that will show up right here. They can get to more events. The top 3 will show up right here. They can get to more events or click around on the calendar. So that's also a new feature. So I don't want to necessarily run you through every page just because that's a lot of pages. I will remind you that this is one of the last portions of a very large project. So this comes on the tail of obviously the branding. And then the same consultant did our engagement page, which is achdIdaho.org/projects, which has really, really taken our public involvement efforts to a whole new level. And we've been very pleased with it. In Christy and Avery's words, they can tell it was designed by somebody who is an expert in public involvement. It's very simple for us on the back end. Our PMs can go in there. Our consultants are given access. It's really helped our public involvement process tremendously. And it's been really valuable for customers to be able to go in and easily access every project that we have coming up that they have public involvement for. They can subscribe directly to that project. They can subscribe. They want to know everything about projects happening in Boise, projects happening in Meridian. There's a variety of ways that they can subscribe. That subscription is also with another project that we did in conjunction with this, which is our Gov Delivery project. And that's where we are allowing people to subscribe in a number of new ways. And we're able to send them targeted email blasts as well as text messages, which is new for us as well. So that's essentially it. Obviously, there are hundreds of pages that we won't walk through, but I stand for any questions if anybody has any. And yeah.
Thank you, Shandy. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Do you know if Granicus had very many geezers doing that test?
They did. I was going to say, I sent it to my mother.
Okay. I couldn't find a commission meeting the first time, but that's just me.
It has gotten simpler to find the agenda and all that sort. It took a few extra clicks, but I noticed you guys made some adjustments, which has been really helpful.
Yes. Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, we did ensure by the second one that we were sending it to even more people and making it more widespread, because that was one of our concerns. We wanted every age bracket to be involved, every skill level to be involved, and every type of user. And I will just show you on one of the pages, as Commissioner Pickering pointed out, we have been making changes, and this is a living, breathing product that will continue to change and evolve. One of the things that we did not have on our previous website that we have here is feedback. And so any page that somebody sees something missing from, or a missing link or broken link, something's not working, they can click on this and then it will send an email directly to our webmaster, Diane, and our team, and we'll get it resolved. So that has been really helpful for us as well. We did launch internally so that our employees could work out some of those little quirks first before we launched externally. And that has helped, and it'll continue to evolve if there's anything that anybody sees. The next steps for us really is continuing to change the mindset internally. So, and this is something that's it's not unique to ACHD. It's very common everywhere, that people tend to start using the website kind of as a filing cabinet and keeping documents on there because that's where they've found them forever, regardless of how beneficial they are to the public. And so it's something that it's a shift in mindset, and I've seen it everywhere I've worked. Granicus was very familiar with that happening. And so it's just making sure that we continue to keep it really nice and clean and simple for the end user, which is our external customers, and then considering where we can put those other things so that we're not causing too much bulk on the website for people to have to get through.
Shandy, just quick question though. So I do appreciate the feedback button, but are you applying any type of application that's going to be routinely going through the website and checking for those broken links?
There is, Diane might have a better answer to that, and she's listening in the back room right now. But there are programs that we could go through and check regularly for broken links, and I think that there is one that's built in to this specific program.
Because I just want to say, if we don't have something that's already scheduled and on deck to do that, I would highly encourage that we do, because it's not sustainable, or I would say efficient enough to just rely on people that view the website to tell us when a link is broken. That's on us, and we should be proactively solving for that.
Madam President, Commissioners, we do have a program that tries to go through and looks for broken links. That has been run, and various divisions have been going through their pages and checking as well.
Okay.
So we're getting after those just as quickly as we find them.
But there isn't a standalone program though that's doing it across the entire website. You're going by program. Is that what you're doing?
No, there is a program that runs through the website that does check for broken links.
Got it. Thank you.
And just to add to that, Madam President, she mentioned that the departments are going through them. So that's something that is fairly new for us as well. We all relied on Diane to do that before, which I think worked for a long time, but we've grown tremendously. So obviously the really difficult things, we still rely heavily on Diane, but really simple changes, we are able to have a simple back end for us as users that we don't need to know how to code. And we can go in and make changes. So all of the departments are being trained, their admins are being trained on how they can go in and make those to be more efficient and more effective for our customers, and not have to rely on one individual to go in and do things, or rely on knowing how to code.
So I'm super pleased with the website, Shandy. It's you picked the right consultant. You've done a tremendous job leading this entire branding operation. And again, I think I've seen a lot of other government, especially government organizations, fall short when they look at these as separate issues. They don't look at the website and how that connects to the branding, or vice versa. And I just think it's beautiful. It's so easy to navigate. I'm sure there's going to be some quirks that we can work through, which is natural with any type of overhaul like this. But you also kept a lot of that similar feel. So it's not, this big clash from the previous website to this new one. It still feels really connected. So I just want to give massive kudos to you and the team. You guys have done a tremendous job on all aspects of this work, and hoping that I've also gotten some accolades that I want to pass over to you, that other government organizations are like, we really like what you guys have been doing. So we're going to be considering updating ours as well. So just kudos and thank you for leading that way.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you.
I had to ask the user question.